15 months. That's how long it had been since Alessandro Di Luca disappeared from the streets of Milan. 15 months since the most feared mafia boss in northern Italy vanished into quiet exile. And 15 months since his wife, Elena, walked out, leaving only a ring, a note, and silence behind. Each morning now, Alessandro fixed the same boat he never sailed. It was his therapy, his way of convincing himself that peace was possible, that the blood he spilled could somehow be washed away by sunlight and still water. He lived by the lake, in a house too large for one man, windows wide open, curtains gently breathing with the wind, a place where even the echoes had grown tired of whispering his name. He told himself he didn't miss her, he didn't miss anyone. But sometimes, in the stillness of day, her laughter would play in his head, like a song he couldn't stop humming, and that was punishment enough. Then, it happened. The phone. Not the new one, not the clean number he used for the market, the fisherman, or the handyman. No. This was the other phone. The one he buried in a drawer 15 months ago, wrapped in a towel and sealed with tape. The phone that belonged to his past. He froze. The kind of stillness that feels heavy. Like the air itself refuses to move. Then, almost unwillingly, he reached for it. Detective Rossi voice over the phone, firm but uneasy. Di Luca. It's Rossi. The name hit him like a memory he didn't want back. Detective Rossi, the man who once swore he'd bury Alessandro alive if he ever returned to Milan. A man of law. And of grudges. Alessandro quiet. Controlled. You must be desperate, Rossi. You never called just to say hello. Detective Rossi. Listen carefully. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't serious. Woman passed away early this morning at San Luca Hospital. She left a note before she died. She named you as the father of her child. For a moment, the world went silent. The wind outside stopped. Even the lake seemed to hold its breath. Alessandro barely audible. What did you just say? Detective Rossi. She said the boy's name is Luca, 5 years old. He's at St. Agatha Orphanage now. There was a nurse's statement. Said the child kept asking for a man who fixes boats. A man who fixes boats. That was her line. Elena used to tell people that when they asked what he did now. Not a mafia boss. Not a killer. Just a man who fixes boats. Quiet moment. Seagull in distance. The hammer drops to the floor. Alessandro low whisper. Rossi. Who was the woman? Detective Rossi. She used a fake name at the hospital. But before she passed, she told the nurse her real one. Elena. Elena Di Luca. Her name carved through him like glass. 15 months since she left. He thought she was gone somewhere far away, somewhere safe. But now, she was gone forever. And she'd left behind a child. A child who might be his. Beat. The sound of the wind growing louder, faster. Alessandro's grip tightened around the phone until his knuckles went white. His mind raced, tangled between disbelief and guilt. He wanted to scream, to deny it, but the truth burned too bright to ignore. Alessandro hoarse. She said it was mine? Detective Rossi. She didn't just say it. She signed it. We verified the note, her handwriting, her fingerprint. No doubt it's hers. Rossi's voice was calm, but beneath it, there was something else, pity. And Alessandro hated pity more than bullets. Alessandro cold, slow. What do you want from me, detective? Congratulations? You think I don't know how to grieve? Detective Rossi. I don't want anything, Di Luca. But the kid's alone now. No relatives. No one to claim him. The orphanage will keep him for a while. But if you don't show up, he'll vanish into the system. The words "he'll vanish" echoed in Alessandro's head. He'd seen what the system did to children like that, how it swallowed them whole. And for reasons he couldn't explain, the thought made his chest ache in ways bullets never did. Alessandro quietly. Where did you say he is? Detective Rossi. St. Agatha Orphanage. On the Marini. Come before sunset, or they'll start paperwork to transfer him out of the city. Then the line went dead. Alessandro sat there, frozen, the daylight burning against his back. He replayed every memory he had of Elena, her smile, her voice, her eyes when she said goodbye. "You'll understand one day what you destroyed." That was the last thing she told him before she walked out. And now, maybe. She was right. He looked at the lake, the reflection of the sky trembling in the ripples. He whispered to himself, "Alessandro, if the boy's mine, then he deserves better than me." But deep down, he knew he couldn't stay away. Because if that child was Elena's, he'd already lost too much not to fight for what was left. Sound, distant footsteps, Marco enters. Marco is bodyguard, rough voice. "Boss? You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." Alessandro softly, eyes distant. "Maybe I did." Marco, "You want me to get the car?" Alessandro, "Yeah, the black one." And Marco, he turns, his voice hardening. "Bring a gun." The peace he built, the quiet he guarded like a secret, was gone. One phone call had torn it all apart. And as he stood on that dock under the bright afternoon sun, Alessandro Di Luca, the man who'd once ruled Milan's underworld, felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear! Not for his life, but for a child he'd never met. And a truth that could destroy him. 15 months of silence. One call. And everything he buried was coming back to life. The morning sun burned brighter than usual. Too bright for the kind of thoughts running through Alessandro Di Luca's mind. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. Every tick of the clock had whispered the same question over and over. What if it's true? What if the child really was his? Now, 15 months after the divorce, the man who once commanded an empire of crime was driving toward a small orphanage on the outskirts of Milan, his past chasing him in the rearview mirror. Beside him sat Marco, his longtime bodyguard, the only man who'd never left his side. Marco's hands rested casually on his lap, but his eyes never stopped scanning the road ahead. Marco, rough voice. "You sure about this, boss? Could be a setup. A trap. You know how these things go." Alessandro, quiet, focused. "If it's a trap, then let them try. But if that boy's mine." He pauses, his voice softens. "Then he deserves to see his father before the world decides he shouldn't." Marco didn't reply. He'd seen Alessandro at his coldest, when a word could mean life or death. But this was different. This was fear, the kind only love could cause. The car slowed as they turned down a narrow road lined with tall cypress trees. At the end stood a worn building, white paint peeling, a rusted gate creaking in the wind. St. Agatha Orphanage, a place forgotten by the city. And by luck itself, Alessandro stepped out, dressed in a black shirt and blazer. Simple, but sharp. He looked too out of place for this world of tiny shoes and chalk drawings on walls. The air smelled faintly of soap, dust, and loneliness. A young nun greeted him, her voice gentle but cautious. "Nun. Signore Di Luca?" Detective Rossi called ahead. "The boy is in the courtyard. He's been waiting." Soft ambient sounds of children laughing in the distance. He followed her through a narrow hallway, the sound of children's laughter echoing faintly around him. Each step felt heavier, slower, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. And then, he saw him. In the courtyard, under a patch of sunlight, sat a small boy in a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, a tiny car clutched in his hands. He was tracing lines in the dirt, completely absorbed in his own world. Dark hair, olive skin, and those same storm-gray eyes. The same eyes Alessandro saw every morning in the mirror. For the first time in years, Alessandro's heart forgot how to stay hard. Footsteps approach. The boy looks up, wary but curious. Luca's soft voice. "Are you the man who fixes boats?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. He didn't answer right away, couldn't. Because only one person ever said that about him. "Elena." Alessandro gently, kneeling down. "Who told you that, little one?" "Luca." "My mom. She said when I meet you, I should ask if you still fix them." He swallowed hard, his throat tightening. This wasn't a setup. This wasn't a trick. This was her child. Their child. He studied the boy, the small scar above his eyebrow, the way he squinted in sunlight, the nervous way he fidgeted with his toy car. So much of Elena in him. And yet, something of himself too. Pride, fire, fear. Alessandro's voice low, trembling. What's your name? Luca smiling shyly. Luca. Luca di Luca. Narrator softly. He said it so easily, as if the name had always been his. And for the first time in 15 months, Alessandro felt something crack open inside him. Something he thought was long dead. He reached out and brushed the boy's hair back gently. His hands, used to violence, trembled at the simple touch of innocence. Alessandro, do you remember your mother? Luca looking down. She was sick, but she told me. She told me my dad would come. She said you'd find me when it was time. Time. That word echoed through him like a curse. Elena had planned this. Even in death, she was guiding him toward the truth. Marco whispering from behind, Boss, we should go. This place makes me nervous. Alessandro turned to silence him, but stopped. Over Marco's shoulder, through the slats of the orphanage fence, two black SUVs were parked across the street. Men inside, suits, watching. Alessandro cold, quiet. How long have they been there? Marco, since we pulled up. They didn't move. Not cops. Alessandro's calm cracked just slightly. He'd been too focused on the boy, too caught off guard. And now the past was watching. He turned back to Luca, forcing a smile. Alessandro, hey, little man, how about we go for a ride? You like cars? Luca brightly, I love cars. Can I bring mine? Alessandro, of course. He took the boy's hand, small, warm, trusting, a feeling so fragile it almost hurt to hold on to. Then he nodded at Marco. Marco grimly, I'll drive. You two keep low. As the car rolled out of the orphanage gates, Alessandro looked back one last time. The nun stood at the doorway, praying silently, her eyes full of worry. It wasn't just a visit anymore. Something darker was unfolding, something Elena had tried to protect him from. Luca softly, looking out the window. Where are we going? Alessandro, someplace safe. Luke, is someone coming after us? Alessandro glancing at Marco. Not if I can help it. The boy turned his toy car in his hands, unbothered, too young to understand the danger. But Alessandro understood. Every instinct in his body screamed the same thing. This isn't over. He pulled out his phone, dialing Rossi's number. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Alessandro gritting his teeth. Rossi, where the hell are you? That's when Marco's voice cut through the silence, sharp, low, urgent. Marco, boss, they're following us. In the rearview mirror, Alessandro saw the SUVs pulling out, shadows glinting in the daylight. 2 cars. Maybe 3. He leaned forward. Alessandro calm but fierce. Keep steady. Don't speed up unless they do. His hand rested protectively on Luca's shoulder. The boy looked up at him, confused but unafraid. And in that moment, that pure, fragile moment, Alessandro realized what was happening. Elena had died for a reason. Someone didn't want this boy found. And now, they knew the father had come looking. Marco gritting teeth. They're closing in. Alessandro, take the next left. We'll lose them through the market streets. Daylight blurred through the windshield as the car darted through narrow alleys. People shouted. Vendors scattered. But Alessandro's focus was unshaken, cold, deadly calm. This was the man he used to be. The man he swore never to become again. Luca frightened whisper. Daddy, are you mad? The word daddy freezes everything. That single word, daddy, broke through every layer of steel inside him. No, he wasn't mad. He was terrified. Terrified that the one innocent thing left in his life was already in danger. He took a deep breath, forcing his voice steady. Alessandro gentle. No, little man. I'm just making sure we get home safe. A shot. Then another. The rear window shattered, glass rained over the seats. Marco. Boss. They're firing. Alessandro gritting his teeth. Drive, Marco. Don't stop. The car swerved, tires screaming against the road. The boy cried out, clutching his toy car. Alessandro pulled him close, shielding him with his arm. He could taste blood from a cut on his lip, smell the smoke of gunfire mixing with sunlight. And through it all, one thought burned in his mind. They knew about the boy. They always knew. They turned down a dirt road, racing toward the open countryside. The SUVs hesitated, then slowed, vanishing into the haze of daylight behind them. The chase was over. For now. But Alessandro knew it was only the beginning. Luca whispering, "Daddy, are we safe now?" Alessandro quiet, steady. "Not yet, Luca. But I promise you, I won't let them take you. Ever!" As the car disappeared down the long empty road, sunlight flickered through the trees. Warm, golden, and cruel. Because behind that light, shadows were already moving, watching, waiting. And somewhere, in a dark office across the city, a voice whispered into a phone. He found the boy. By the time the sun rose again, Alessandro Di Luca had already driven far from the city, far from the gunfire, the chase, and the ghosts of his old life. The road wound through endless countryside, golden fields swaying under the light. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed somewhere no one could find them. In the back seat, Luca slept, small hand clutching his toy car, head resting against the window. Every time the boy stirred, Alessandro looked back, as if to make sure he was still real. He finally pulled into an old farmhouse, quiet, abandoned, half swallowed by ivy. It was one of his old safe houses, a place no one had touched in years. Marco parked the car beside it and killed the engine. Marco gruff voice, "Boss, you sure about staying here? This place hasn't been used since." Alessandro cutting him off, calm but heavy. "Since before I lost everything. That's what makes it perfect." He stepped out, the sunlight spilling across the cracked walls and overgrown grass. The air smelled of dust and memory. And for the first time since that call, Alessandro allowed himself to breathe. Inside, the house was quiet, only the faint creak of wood and the chirp of birds outside. He found a small blanket and laid it over the boy, watching as Luca curled into it, peaceful. In that still moment, Alessandro saw himself, not the man he'd become, but the one he once wanted to be. A husband, a father, someone Elena could have loved without fear. But peace never lasted long in his world, not when truth still hid in the dark. He sat by the window, the phone heavy in his hand. He dialed Detective Rossi again. No answer. Just silence. He tried again. Still nothing. Alessandro, under his breath. "Where the hell are you, Rossi?" Marco entered, holding a tablet he'd pulled from the car's glove compartment, an old contact terminal. He placed it on the dusty table. "Marco, boss, you need to see this. I found something strange on the news feeds." Reporter muffled through device. "The sudden death of Elena Di Luca has raised questions after hospital footage from the night of her passing went missing. Sources claim the system was wiped by an unknown user hours before the police arrived." The words hit him like cold metal. Footage missing. A hospital system wiped. "Marco, that doesn't happen by accident. Someone covered their tracks." Alessandro cold. Someone powerful. He stood there, fists tightening. The pieces were starting to fit, and they pointed to something far bigger than coincidence. He remembered Elena's face the last time he saw her. The tears, the fear, the words she whispered before walking out. "One day, you'll understand what you destroyed." Now, he finally did. She wasn't running from him. She was running for him and for their child. As dusk turned to afternoon light, Alessandro sat across from Marco, the weight of realization pressing down on him. "Alessandro, Elena found something. Something she shouldn't have. That's why she hid Luca. She was protecting him." "Marco, from who?" Alessandro quietly. "From the people who used to stand beside me." It was a truth too heavy to say aloud. The same men who once called him boss might have taken Elena's life. Luca's sleepy voice. "Daddy?" Alessandro gentle. "Hey, little man. You hungry?" Luca nodding. "Do we live here now?" That question caught him off guard. "Do we live here now?" as if it were the simplest thing in the world. He smiled faintly, the kind that hurts to hold. Alessandro, for a little while, just for a little while. The boy nodded, satisfied, and wandered toward the window, staring at the fields glowing gold in the daylight. He looked safe, but Alessandro's mind couldn't rest. He checked the guns, the locks, every exit. The calm felt unnatural, too still. Then, a message. An old number, one he thought he'd erased years ago. The message read, "We need to talk, or the boy dies next." He stared at the screen, the letters burning into his mind. No name, no number, just the same encrypted tag used by Giovanni Moretti. Marco tense. Giovanni? It can't be. He's supposed to be dead. Alessandro. Men like him don't die. They just wait. Giovanni Moretti, once Alessandro's most trusted ally, now his fiercest enemy. The man who wanted his throne. The man who turned half the city against him when he walked away from the underworld. If Giovanni knew about Luca, it could only mean one thing. He was the reason Elena was gone. Alessandro quietly, with rage. He killed her. Marco, we don't know that yet. Alessandro coldly. I know. His voice was so calm, it was terrifying. The kind of calm that came before storms, before blood. Night approached, gray clouds swallowing the daylight. Alessandro stood outside the farmhouse, looking at the horizon, the wind pressing against his face. He felt the old self rising again, the man who ruled through fear, the one who solved pain with violence. But behind him, through the window, he saw Luca's small face watching, innocent, trusting. That one look stopped him. Alessandro quiet, to himself. Not like before. Not this time. He took out his phone, recorded a short voice message to Rossi. Alessandro firm. Low. Rossi. I know who's behind this. Giovanni Moretti. If you're still alive, find proof. I'll handle the rest. He hit send. No response. Only silence. Somewhere deep down, he already knew Rossi might never answer again. Hours later, the farmhouse was cloaked in shadows. Marco sat near the window, keeping watch. Alessandro tucked Luca into bed, the boy's tiny hand holding his thumb until sleep came. In that quiet, he whispered to the sleeping child. Alessandro's soft, breaking voice. I couldn't protect your mother, but I'll protect you, even if it kills me. Moment of silence, faint ticking of a clock. Then, the ticking stopped. Marco alert whisper. Boss. Movement. Outside. Both men froze. Through the thin curtains, they saw headlights flash briefly, then vanish. Marco. Could be hunters. Or Alessandro. No! Hunters don't cut engines. The old instincts roared back to life. He motioned Marco to stay with the boy and silently moved toward the door, gun drawn. The night air hit him, cold and thick. He could smell rain coming, and beneath it, cigarette smoke. Someone was close. Alessandro calling out quietly. Giovanni. He stepped farther into the field, the grass brushing against his legs, every shadow a threat. Then from the dark, a voice emerged, smooth, mocking, familiar. Giovanni from a distance. Always knew you'd come back for something, old friend. Never thought it'd be a child. Alessandro coldly. You touched her, didn't you? Giovanni. She was going to expose everything. The deals, the laundering, the orphanage money. I couldn't let that happen. And now you're here, picking up her mistakes. The rage that Alessandro had buried for 15 months came roaring back, raw and merciless. Alessandro steady, low. If you come near my son, Giovanni, I'll bury you myself. Giovanni laughing. Oh, Alessandro, you don't even know what game you're in. That boy isn't your weakness, he's your death sentence. Sound. A gun cocks. Before Alessandro could answer, headlights flashed again, this time from the tree line. Dozens of them. Engines. Giovanni's voice echoed one last time. See you soon, Father of the Year. By the time Alessandro reached the road, the cars were gone, only tire marks in the mud and the echo of laughter left behind. He stood there in the rain, heart pounding, soaked in guilt and fury. Alessandro quiet, shaking. Bloodlines and betrayal. That's all that's left of me. Behind him, lightning flashed, illuminating the farmhouse window. And there, silhouetted by the light, stood Luca, watching, eyes wide, afraid. Alessandro knew then the storm had only just begun, and before it ended, every secret, every betrayal, would bleed. The sun was high over the city, too bright, too calm for the kind of darkness that was coming. 15 months after losing his family, and only 2 days after finding his son, Alessandro Di Luca walked straight into the open, knowing someone wanted him dead. But this time, he wasn't hiding. This time, he was setting the trap. For hours, he'd been planning every move, every exit. The old instincts, the killer's instincts, were back. The farmhouse was no longer safe. Giovanni knew. So Alessandro made the only choice a man like him could: face the enemy head-on. He chose a place impossible to ignore. The Piazza di Santa Lucia. Broad daylight. Crowded streets. The kind of place no one would expect two mafia men to meet. He walked across the square in his black suit, the same one he wore the night his empire fell. The sunlight hit the gold cufflinks at his wrists, the ones Elena once gave him. They glimmered faintly, like ghosts of a life that used to be his. In his ear, Marco's voice crackled through a small earpiece. Marco urgent, low voice. Boss, are you sure about this? Too many eyes. Too many angles. It's a perfect setup for him. Alessandro calm, cold. That's why he'll take the bait. He sat at a corner cafe, the kind where people come and go without noticing faces. He ordered a coffee. No sugar. And waited. For a brief second, his gaze drifted to the park across the street. A father was pushing his little boy on a swing, laughter echoing through the warm afternoon. It was the kind of sound that once meant peace. Now, it only twisted the knife in deeper. Alessandro had been many things: a son, a husband, a boss, but never truly a father. Every time he looked at Luca, the boy's eyes reminded him of Elena, kind, curious, untainted. He didn't deserve that kind of innocence. Not with the blood on his hands. He took a slow sip of coffee, hiding the shaking in his fingers. Marco threw earpiece. 2 o'clock, boss. Black Mercedes. That's him. Alessandro didn't move, didn't blink. The car door opened, and out stepped Giovanni Moretti. White suit, gold watch, and that smile, the same arrogant smirk that used to make underlings flinch. He walked casually through the crowd, a man at ease in the daylight, a man who believed he'd already won. Giovanni grinning, taking a seat. You always did like to make an entrance, Alessandro. Bold move, meeting here. Alessandro calmly. I'm done hiding. Giovanni chuckling. Good. Saves me the trouble of finding you. Their eyes met across the small table, two wolves dressed as men. Around them, life went on. Laughter, chatter, the clatter of cups. But at that table, time stood still. Alessandro cold. Why did you kill her? Giovanni feigning innocence. Kill who? Alessandro through gritted teeth. Elena. For the first time, Giovanni's smile faltered. Just a flicker. But that was enough. Giovanni leaning back. She dug too deep. She found the orphanage accounts, the ones tied to your old network, the money laundering, the bribes. If she had gone to the police, we'd both be in prison. Alessandro. She was protecting my son. Giovanni smirking. Your son? You really think that boy is yours? The words hit like a blade. For a second, Alessandro forgot to breathe. Giovanni leaning closer, voice low. Didn't Elena tell you? She came to me. After you broke her heart. After you destroyed everything she loved. She came to me for protection, for comfort. The cafe noise faded. Every sound, gone. Only the slow pounding of Alessandro's heart filled his ears. Giovanni whispering, that boy might not be yours. He wanted to kill him right there, in broad daylight, in front of everyone. But the words, the possibility, froze him in place. Could it be true? Could Elena have hidden that too? Alessandro hoarse, furious whisper. You're lying. Giovanni smirking. Am I? Giovanni stood up slowly, brushing dust from his sleeve. Enjoy your coffee, old friend, he said. We'll see each other again soon. He turned, and just like that, disappeared into the crowd. Alessandro sat motionless, staring at his reflection in the spilled coffee. His mind screamed. His chest ached. Every memory of Elena, every argument, every touch, twisted into a question he could no longer answer. Marco threw earpiece, tense. Boss! What happened? What did he say? Alessandro flat, distant. Nothing that matters. He stood and walked away, his face calm, but his soul burning. But then, halfway across the street, boss, get down. N-O-W. The cafe exploded behind him, flames tearing through tables, shattering windows, smoke billowing into the daylight. Bodies hit the ground. Screams filled the air. Marco yelling, Boss, talk to me. Are you hit? Alessandro pushed himself up from the ground, blood running down his arm, ears ringing. He looked back. The cafe was gone. Just fire and dust. Giovanni's trap. In broad daylight. He stumbled toward the alley, Marco's car skidding to a stop beside him. They didn't speak, just moved. Inside the car, Alessandro clutched his shoulder, blood seeping through his sleeve. Marco frantic. I told you, it was a setup. You could have died. Alessandro through gritted teeth. I was supposed to. Marco. What? Alessandro cold, broken. He doesn't want me dead yet. He wants me to suffer first. Marco stared at him, stunned. Marco, what did he tell you? Alessandro whispering. He said, Luca might not be mine. Silence. Engine idles softly. Marco softly. You don't believe that, do you? Alessandro after a pause. I don't know what to believe anymore. The city blurred past as they drove, streets melting into streaks of color. For the first time in his life, Alessandro felt lost. Not as a boss, not as a fighter, but as a man, torn between blood and love, vengeance and truth. Back at the farmhouse, Luca was waiting by the door, holding a drawing in his tiny hands. When Alessandro stepped out of the car, the boy ran to him, smiling. Luca innocent, happy. Daddy, look. I drew us. On the paper, two stick figures holding hands, a sun shining above them, and beneath it, written in crooked letters, me and Daddy. In that moment, everything inside Alessandro shattered. The blood, the betrayal, the lies, none of it mattered when he looked into the boy's eyes. Whether Luca was his by blood or not, he was his son. He knelt, holding Luca tight, whispering, Alessandro gentle, breaking, don't ever let go, little one. Not ever. But the moment of peace didn't last. Through the window, Marco saw it, a black car parked just beyond the trees. No plates, no movement. Marco low, urgent whisper. Boss, we've been followed. Alessandro stood, his face hardening once again. The sunlight glinted off the revolver in his hand. Alessandro cold, steady. Take Luca to the basement. Don't make a sound. Marco obeyed instantly, grabbing the boy's hand. Alessandro moved to the window, staring into the light, eyes filled with rage and resolve. For the first time in years, the lion was fully awake again. Alessandro whispering, You want me, Giovanni? Come and get me. Music swells, dark, dramatic strings building to a powerful crescendo. The trap had been set, but what Alessandro didn't know was that the real trap wasn't out there. It was already inside his home, because someone he trusted had already betrayed him. The farmhouse was quiet, too quiet. Only the ticking of the old wall clock echoed through the halls. But Alessandro di Luca knew. Silence was the loudest warning of all. The black car outside hadn't moved. The sunlight glared off its windshield, unmoving, watching, waiting. He stood in the middle of the room, revolver in hand, heart heavy with what he already suspected. Someone inside had betrayed him, and the truth would hurt more than any bullet ever could. Alessandro cold, quiet. Marco, close the door. Marco froze halfway through the kitchen, his hand hovering near his gun. Marco uneasy. Boss, it's just me. We're clear. The boy's in the basement. Alessandro cutting him off, voice low. I said, close the door. The air thickened. Marco hesitated, then slowly pushed the door shut. For a long, terrible second, neither spoke. Just two men, once brothers in arms, now standing on opposite sides of something invisible, but deadly. Alessandro measured. How long have you been talking to Giovanni? Marco tense whisper. Boss, you don't understand. Alessandro snapping. I understand betrayal when I see it. His voice cracked the air like thunder. The gun didn't waver, but his eyes did. Pain, disbelief, rage. All fighting for control. Marco desperate. I had no choice. He had my sister. You think I'd sell you out? He was gonna kill her. The words hit Alessandro hard, but not enough to lower the gun. Alessandro coldly. So you gave him Elena. You told him where she was. Marco voice breaking. I thought he'd just threaten her. I didn't know he'd. Marco couldn't finish. Tears streaked the grime on his face. And in that broken silence, Alessandro understood. The betrayal that took Elena's life had come from inside his home. Luca's small voice. Daddy? Alessandro turned, instantly lowering the gun. Luca stood at the top of the basement steps, clutching his toy car. His big brown eyes darted between the two men, sensing something was wrong. Alessandro softly. Go back downstairs, son. Luca quietly. I heard yelling. The innocence in his voice cracked Alessandro's heart wide open. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Alessandro gentle. It's all right, Luca. Go wait for me. I'll be right there. Luca nodded, hesitating before turning back down the steps. The sound of his small footsteps faded into the dark. And just like that, the mask dropped again. Alessandro flat, emotionless. Where is Giovanni now? Marco quietly. He said he'd come for the boy himself. Said he wanted you to watch when he took him. Alessandro's blood ran cold. Every muscle in his body tensed, his jaw locking. Alessandro low growl. Then he'll have to walk through hell to touch him. Within minutes, the farmhouse became a fortress. Windows barricaded, guns loaded. Every shadow became a weapon. But as Alessandro worked, something inside him began to shift. For years, he'd ruled through violence, controlled everything and everyone around him. But this time, it wasn't about control. It was about love, and the one chance to make things right. He paused by the kitchen table, where a small envelope lay unopened. Elena's handwriting on the front. He'd found it weeks ago among her old things, too afraid to read it. Now, he finally did. Inside, one line was written in her elegant hand. If you're reading this, it means you found him. Protect our son. Not as a boss, but as a father. Alessandro whispering. Elena. Her words broke him, quietly, completely. He pressed the letter to his lips, his eyes glistening in the dim light. And for the first time in 15 months, Alessandro Di Luca prayed. Marco panicked whisper. They're here. Giovanni's men, half a dozen black cars surrounding the farmhouse. Daylight blazed across their guns. Alessandro moved to the window, his reflection framed in sunlight. For a moment, he saw not a killer, but a father who refused to lose again. Alessandro quietly. Stay with Luca, no matter what happens. Marco nodding. Boss! Alessandro, you owe me this one, brother. The first bullet shattered the window. Then another. Glass exploded, sunlight scattering through the smoke. Alessandro dove behind the couch, returning fire, precise, deadly. Years of buried fury unleashed in a storm of violence. Outside, men dropped one after another. But more came. They kept coming. Until a familiar voice called out from the yard. Giovanni shouting, Come out, Alessandro. Let's finish this like men. Alessandro rose slowly, stepping through the shattered doorway into the blinding light. Blood on his sleeve, rage in his eyes. The two men faced each other, sunlight reflecting off the guns in their hands. 15 years of loyalty. 15 months of grief. It all ended here. Giovanni sneering. You always thought you could be something more than us. A good man. A father. But you can't wash blood off your hands. Alessandro calm. Quiet. You're right. Giovanni confused. What? Alessandro with resolve. But I can choose what kind of man my son remembers me as. For a second, everything stopped. Two men. Two destinies colliding under the burning sun. Then Giovanni fell, collapsing onto the dry earth, eyes still open, shock frozen on his face. Alessandro stood there, breathing hard, smoke rising from the barrel of his gun. It was over. When he turned back toward the house, Luca was standing in the doorway, eyes wide, trembling. Luca tearful whisper, Daddy, did you hurt someone? Alessandro froze, words dying in his throat. How do you tell a child the truth that monsters can look like men, and sometimes they carry your face? He knelt, tears cutting through the dirt on his cheeks. Alessandro softly, I hurt someone bad, but I did it to keep you safe. Luca didn't speak. He just threw his small arms around his father's neck, holding him tighter than he ever had before. And in that fragile embrace, Alessandro felt something he hadn't in years. Forgiveness. It wasn't from Elena. It wasn't from the world he'd broken. It was from his son, the one soul who saw him not as a monster, but as a man. And for the first time since that phone call, Alessandro Di Luca stopped being the mafia boss. He became what he should have been all along, a father. As police cars climbed the hill toward the farmhouse, Alessandro knew his time was up. But he didn't run. He didn't hide. He handed Luca to Marco and whispered one last time. Alessandro softly. Tell him I loved him enough to let go. Marco nodded, tears in his eyes, carrying the boy away through the back fields as the sirens grew louder. Alessandro turned to face the flashing lights, standing tall, unarmed, his head high under the warm daylight. He wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because somewhere, somehow, Elena was watching, and maybe, just maybe, she was proud. Some stories end in revenge. Some end in blood. But this one ended in forgiveness. Because sometimes, being a father doesn't mean you were perfect. It means you were willing to fight, even when you'd already lost everything. Pause. If this story touched your heart, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes, the next story begins right after the last goodbye.